There we go. Hello, Francis. Good morning. This is our In Conversation podcast with Francis Norton for Magical Women. Yeah, how are you feeling today? Let's just start with that.
Yeah, no, I'm quite excited to do the podcast. I've never even listened to a podcast.
Well, there's a first time for everything, and it's always good to start. You know, if you can talk about your own work, then that's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just going to dive straight in. Being as it's your first podcast experience, let's start by talking about beginnings. When did you first feel the call to make? Is it something that you've felt since you were really, really small, or something that you've kind of grown into?
I guess I was really lucky because both my parents are creative and they're both jewellery designers. So I kind of grew up with my mum like making jewellery in the kitchen and like losing diamonds on the floor. Having to sweep up the whole house to try and find them, and also they also taught at the art college, so a lot of our friends or neighbours were also very creative, and if I went to my friend's house, like they were Norwegian weavers, and they showed me how to like do the loom, or we had another friend from South Africa who was a potter, and she'd like bring clay round and we'd like just make stuff together. So I think I was like really lucky, blessed to have so many creative people in my childhood. So it never kind of felt like a big decision, right, I'm going to start making stuff now. It was just, what shall I make, rather than, yeah. And I always knew that I was going to do something creative. I wasn't quite sure what pathway of creativeness I was going to go down, but yeah.
I think that's really interesting. I quite often think about this idea of sort of influence as an art family, but obviously that can be, as out there in the world as people who have been dead for hundreds of years and are really famous, but quite often it is just those seeds that are set in our home environment in the first place that really make a difference.
Yeah.
And if you had that kind of smorgasbord of influences just from your daily life,
Yeah.
do you think that's been part of the reason why your work is quite transdisciplinary?
I think so. I think, like as a teenager, naturally I wanted to rebel against my parents and do something different. It's quite different to rebel against two people who are so rebellious themselves. Like, what can I do? So I kind of decided to do something different than jewellery. That was my rebellion. And I went into pottery instead, and ceramics. But yeah, I think being ADHD, like I get very obsessed with things, and that obsession can lead to like a 3-year like love affair with ceramics, which afterwards then I just kind of float off to photography, or I get like distracted by textiles, or this has been my journey really. It's not straight at all. It's very rhizomatic. It's a big tangle of roots, which actually I'm okay with.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've sort of always found it odd personally when people tend to hit upon that one thing. And I think if you've got, especially if you've got ADHD, actually, I can really relate to this, that kind of forcing yourself into just doing one thing feels crazy to you, because that might not be the one thing that can answer the question you're asking in that moment as an artist.
Yes, no, I think that's so true. And I think it's really easy when you go to art college to get into a silo. So like I was doing ceramics, and that was my silo, and all my friends were potters. And it took like having to leave university, when I've finished, graduated, whatever, to give myself permission to work in other materials. Because even when I was in ceramics, I was like always like off doing life drawing classes, or you know, kind of going to interview people, or, you know, just trying out different stuff. And like the teachers were always like, will you come back to the studio and make some pops?
What
um,
is it though, do you think, that attracts you to those particular materials and practices?
I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I love
But
it.
yeah, and being a bit older and thinking back on my creative practice and how it began, and what I felt naturally drawn to. And I think something in ceramics is that it's so malleable, it's so mutable. And the also the fire, like I was so in love with the fire. You know, they do say a lot of potters are pyromaniacs. So I love being able to shape something with my own hands or with like tools, and then seeing transformation in the fire. Like transformation is like a really big theme for me. And you know, I love transformation stories, fairy tales, and so like ceramics was like an embodiment of that, that idea of transformation. You know, the transformation through the fire. You know, the colours, you're never quite sure how they're going to come out, the glazes and things. Yeah.
And if the object, I guess, itself is going to survive, because
Yeah,
you know,
no, that's true. Yeah, yeah,
there
yeah.
is a failure rate, especially my mother's a potter, and for like
Ah,
she will do a few raku firings every year. And
yeah.
I mean, I have to say, I'm obsessed with history, so I do love pots, and I love the fact she's a potter. She made
Mm.
this; it's one of her
Oh,
discards.
that's
I'm like, how is
beautiful.
it one of your discards? I steal everything she wants to throw away.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm sort of frightened of the action of making in clay myself. My daughter's a natural. Like,
Huh.
she just managed to get on a wheel and throw straight away.
Wow.
So I think it skipped a generation, but I'm definitely fascinated by the idea of clay. But I think for me, it feels more alive when you're squidging it than it does
Mm.
when you've baked it. It's a bit like bones. Uh,
Yes, it's like a piece of stone, isn't it? It's unmovable. Yeah,
but there are
I
also
think.
these things that you make that have such a legacy; they will last for.
Yeah, that's a good thing and a bad thing. Because like when I think back to my 20s and the kind of work that I was making then, and I think, well, it's like everything that you do in your 20s, you kind of think, oh God, that's so embarrassing. There's no getting rid of those parts. They're just like sitting there. Yeah, but it is extremely satisfying to smash stuff too.
Yeah, I guess there is that, destruction is probably part of that element of transformation, isn't it? If you're looking at
Yeah,
things that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
don't feel as satisfying or don't feel serve your artistic kind of journey anymore. I've never
Yeah,
thought about that disposability.
yeah. I think the other thing as well is that you know, after 30 years of being a maker, you get quite a lot of plastic boxes full of stuff
Hmm.
to carry around with you, and yeah, it's just impossible. You just end up giving it away to everybody because like, there's no way you can store that amount of stuff.
Do you have pieces that you will never give away?
Yes, I do have, and I'm quite glad. You know, quite a lot of them ended up at my parents' house in a cardboard box in the cellar. But I'm quite glad they're there because, you know, at certain points I like hate them so much. I just want to take a hammer to them. But then, like, I come back around and I think, no, actually, there was something in there that was me at that time. It's like a snapshot of what I was thinking, how I was feeling, what I was interested in. It's like
Yeah.
almost like a diary page.
And is there anything kind of connective between those pieces, or?
Yeah, I would say like my faith is like a big thing, that like a big theme that has connected those things. Um, there's other kind of like more kind of material ideas, like I love colour, you know, and I love figure drawing, and so those things are kind of material ideas, but like kind of you know, something beyond myself, something bigger than
Mm.
me. that has been like a massive
So
theme.
there's a few ways we could probably go from there. Like, I was really struck by this idea of the way that you use your creativity and you use your art making as a processing medium. So there's
Mm,
all these ideas, and they're big ideas of kind of death and life and grief and birth in your work.
mm,
But there is obviously also that really explicit connection with spirituality and iconography, and
mm,
the idea of connecting to this bigger consciousness. So whether that is your family, your community,
mm.
collecting at the edges of places and things, or whether it is a more explicit kind of religious ideology that you're working with, or the fairy tales as well,
Yeah.
to some extent. Um, where do you want to go with the conversation next? Do you want to talk about the processing or the spirituality, or do you feel like they're connected?
Um, yeah, I think everything's connected in my mind. uh,
Sorry, that's a big question.
yeah, I know. Mm, and yeah, I think spirituality is definitely something that kind of threads its way like a red thread through all my work, through my ideas, through everything. And I guess my version of spirituality includes community, and community is like a massive part of who I am, of my feeling of belonging, of being part of something bigger than me.
Mm,
Um, and of those friendships being spiritual friendships, in that um, we can fall out with each other, and we can disagree with each other's politics, and but at the heart of our friendship is something even bigger than that. It's bigger than politics, it's bigger than religion, it's bigger than like kind of the trappings of religion, or the rules and regulations. Those spiritual friendships are like what really keep me fed, keep me grounded. And just think about the people in our community. It's a big community. There's probably about 200 people in it around the UK. But it, it's something that's lasted since I was like 14. Uh, so yeah, I feel really, inspired by my community. That there's such a range of like ages and experiences. People are all doing such beautiful things, that it kind of leads me on to push myself. What am I doing for other people? How can I involve like other communities in my work? And so that's been part of some of my thinking. Because when you're an artist, you do spend quite a lot of time on your own, kind of beavering away in the studio. Um, but it has to be a balance for me. It has to be a balance between that studio time where you really immerse yourself in your practice, the practice of doing whatever it is. And yeah, we were talking about earlier, I give myself permission to practice in lots of different ways, and also to work in ways that I haven't worked before, just to add to the extra challenge. But yeah, it's the balance between being on my own in the studio making things, which I think I can only do by myself, and being with community that
mm,
inspire me, just seeing the amazing good stuff that people do, like going over to Calais and working in those camps with migrants, um, working for CAFOD, which is like Catholic Oxfam,
mhm.
or people do such amazing job with youth work. They do a lot of youth work about kind of sexuality and religion, and just kind of being with young people through.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting time to see how
Mm,
kind of the way the world is changing and moving,
yeah,
and the way young people are taking so much ownership of their own narrative in a way that I know I would have been frightened to when I was very young.
yeah, totally.
And how that's kind of meeting these really old spiritual institutions,
Yes.
that
Mm,
tension is really fascinating, and often a lot more kind of permeable and welcoming than I think people would imagine. I think
Yeah,
we're hitting a really interesting space for that.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, this conversation, there's like a big conversation in the Catholic Church going on about LGBTQ plus community, and you know, sorry, I don't want to make this into a big religious thing, but the Pope has been very accepting of that community, and it's ruffled a lot of feathers. But for our community, this is like something that we've wanted to hear for so long. You know, members of our community who are in that LGBTQ plus, you know, kind of group, who have felt unheard, unlistened to, unseen within religion.
And that idea of kind of the exclusivity of it,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Which kind of goes against the whole tenet of
yeah,
like
if you feel something in your
love.
bones, a belief in your bones, then it kind of doesn't matter what the outer
Exactly,
the
exactly.
outer form takes.
Yeah,
And especially if you're talking about Catholicism, I guess the ideas of transformation, and they're just so deeply embedded in the way that the
yeah.
practice of that faith
Absolutely. Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
embodied, that yeah,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
going to be an interesting time.
Yeah.
And this is where, like, actually speaking of the Catholic faith and of those kind of transformations, there's a question I have about the way that you use iconography in your work, because I find it really interesting, and whether there are any particular icons that you feel more attracted to, and whether they connect outside of that, or how, because they do, how they connect outside of that religious framework into a larger spiritual fairy tale, you know,
Mm,
everyday banal kind of sense as well. But also ideas about alchemy, because
mm,
I think that's something that is a connecting thread through a lot of what you do as well. This, again, with the transformation. And
yeah.
as an alchemist and an artist, what is your philosopher's stone? What is the thing that you are seeking?
Good questions. I think iconography is something that came to kind of later in my creative practice, but the fit was so good. And I realised that it had actually been something. I've been looking at these icons for the whole of my life. You know, they're in churches, we have them at home, and you know. Um, so when I actually went into the kind of the looking of how to create icons, there's a whole symbolism around the face and around like the shape of the eyes and spacing of the eyes, and the way that each element of the icon is something that you can pray through, or kind of that means something interesting. You know, I think especially the eyes, I was so drawn to the way that the eyes were painted on an icon. And in icons, they don't call it icon painting, they call it icon writing, which I think is really interesting. So it's like mark making. It's like it's like you're telling a story through line, but those lines happen to be an image. So I think that's a really interesting part of iconography. But the eyes, yeah, the eyes are they often like bigger than they should be normally, and they don't have like when somebody paints an eye, they might put like a reflective bit on the pupil to kind of show light that you're next to a window, or you know, like if you were doing a portrait, that's how you would do it. But in an icon, you don't put that light on because the light comes from the inside.
Wow, so they're
That's
more
really
like
beautiful.
portals.
Yes, yeah. So the light is coming from the eyes, and the light inside them is the creator, the power of the creator. So I think that's really beautiful. And you were talking earlier about the connection, about the materiality of what I do, and the other thing that I love about the icons is that they're very elemental. So,
Mm.
you know, you paint them, and the pigments are earth pigments mixed with egg and vodka and water. So you've got those kind of food references and libation, you know, joyful, you know, alcohol, moderation references. but also the earth that we all come from, and
Yeah.
that's, I love that it's like so grounded and connected. But also the gold that we use is my connection to my parents and their jewelry making. So it's like the materiality of making an icon links me with the past. It links me in a massive tradition, like a 1,000-year-old tradition of painting these icons, which come from like Byzantine times.
Mhm.
And it also links me with my family. So it's, you know, these elements that, you know, when I put them together, it brings a lot of things into one image. Um, and there's things like the skin has to be like super like soft and like pillowy, but the garments have to be quite geometric. And so it's kind of that idea of what we are reflects the place that we live in. So it's like situated, a situated image. So like the garments could reflect like mountains or hills, quite, you know, geometric mountainy, and but the skin like reflects our humanity and our vulnerable softness. Uh, so yeah,
Wow.
yeah, quite
There's
often.
something quite fascinating with all of that as well, though, about this idea of being a neurodivergent woman as well, and
Mm,
masking, and how that kind of, the way that you read other people, especially their
mm,
faces, just to
yeah,
try and feel less of an outsider, or less of an
yeah,
other, so you can emulate that. Um, the level of detail to which you're able to describe how you would build an icon and how you would conjure that kind of really special image. Yeah, I think there's something there, although I'm asking it or expressing it very clumsily.
no, I think what I think you're saying is that as neurodivergent, I mean, I know I've struggled with this. You know, I felt like it took me so long to understand what people were doing with their bodies when they were communicating with me. You know, like I was like, how do people read this? Like, just get it. You know, like always getting it wrong. You know, because like I couldn't read people's faces. I think that's the other thing that I love about the icons is that there's a tradition to putting a face together in an icon, and it doesn't change.
So that's just what that means. There's
Yeah.
no ambiguity at
Mm,
all.
no, no, yeah, and that the face is like it is only a mask. It's a mask for what's within,
Mm,
and or what's coming from the creator inside to you, and you're projecting to that person. So the face, although it is often very beautiful in icons, um, it's saying something different than you know, like Hello Magazine beauty.
yeah.
It's
It's
saying,
expressing the integrity of that inner world, I suppose.
yes, I think integrity is a really good word. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something we worry so much about as neurodivergent women.
Mm,
That's, I mean, that's why you mask, because you don't trust the integrity of your own innards.
yes.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, were you, is it a late diagnosis that you've had?
Yeah. Yeah. Quite late.
Sometimes I think this is a double-edged sword, because you get to a point where you actually just, as an artist, as a human, you've been around for long enough that you just start to think you don't really care about what other people
Yeah.
think. So to then have that diagnosis that you can grasp at that point and go, oh, that all makes sense now. Okay, well, I'm going to really sit within my own integrity as that being.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
be quite a gift, despite all of the stuff that you've had to experience and all that discomfort up
Yeah.
to that point.
I
Um,
think it's a matter of reassessing the past as well. And so I'm in the middle of my PhD, and something that really what I love about writing this PhD is that it's not just about all the books and the articles and the conferences. It's about reassessing me as an artist and a creative and a writer, which is you know, I would have never put myself label writer before, but this process is so kind of, I don't know, it kind of rakes through you and pulls things to the surface. This idea that we all have social locators was something that I hadn't thought about before. And so what I've interpreted that to mean is that we were born in a certain geography, to certain parents of a certain class. We are a certain gender, and we have certain belief systems. And when we look at all those elements of who we are in those social locators, then we can stop doing the stuff that hurts other people and change and act on that transformation. You know, I can kind of move beyond like the negative stuff of like being dyslexic and ADHD, and I can put that to one side almost. I can say that is like where I started, and but I can, now that I know that it's there, I can put it in this box, or I can just put it to one side, and I can do something about that that bad behavior that I was doing.
I mean, I'm bad behavior.
Well, no, I don't, you know, I think as an ADHD person, then I think like I have hurt people in the past, and I feel really bad for that.
That's fair.
But part of that was not knowing who I was, or understanding the diagnosis, or, you know,
not knowing where your own edges are, I think, is quite a big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few things there. So what was it about the practice of study that drew you to academia? And I'm sort of fascinated by this idea. Again, you've had reasonably late diagnosis. My own experience of doing a PhD was actually really painful. And I think that you're right. There is this kind of scouring through yourself. You have to break yourself down as a researcher, but often that also extends to breaking yourself down as a person and then having to rebuild, especially if you can't quite separate those two things. So I never finished mine, but that's fine. I've still managed to learn a lot from the process of not finishing.
It is. I mean, like, I could stop now and, you know, I would have learned so much. And a lot of that learning is, you know, things that I needed to know earlier. Sometimes I feel like it's a continuing process of getting to know myself better. And, you know, there's lots of different ways of trying to get to know myself. You know, like I might go on like a spiritual retreat where you hear about like amazing lives that you want to kind of emulate. And on this amazing retreat in Holy Island, about the German woman Etty Hillesum. So she's like somebody in World War II who was Jewish, who did end up going to concentration camp and dying, but like she has like a revelation about who she is in the world, and like she writes this massive diary kind of around the same time as Anne Frank, but she's kind of in her 20s, and so listening to the story of Etty Hillesum was like amazingly inspirational for me. You know, just thinking about how she transformed her life in the midst of like such horribleness. And so those kind of ways of understanding myself through other people, I think that's something that I find to be useful, definitely.
She's a very good guard dog, but someone's getting a delivery over the road. Ridiculous. Have you had enough now? Oh dear, they're so vocal. Sorry. Right, that's enough. After that rude interruption.
That's fine.
So has that kind of reflexivity about your own practice always been built in? Is that something that you've always had, or is the kind of practice of research been something that you've latched onto as you've grown as an artist?
The PhD in kind of research came on much later because when you're a maker, you know, I put myself in that silo of I make things, I don't write about things. So it took quite a long time for me to turn that around and go, actually, I can write about things too. It's fine. And I think I probably wouldn't have come to it myself, but being in education, there is like a push for constant kind of training all the time, you know, kind of every year we have to do like prevent, we have to, you know, all these really important things that we need training about our students' well-being. But the side effect is that I think about my well-being too. So yeah, which is really good. And that is actually how I came to my diagnosis of dyslexia and ADHD. And don't know if I would have. I always knew there was like something going on, and my sister and I are like so similar. And I remember coming home from the ADHD training, where I'd gone to the front afterwards to the trainer and said, I think she was a mental health nurse, and said, I think I'm ADHD, and she went, just do this test. So I went off and did the test, and she went, yeah. Like I would have never got there on my own without that training to help students. And then I go, oh my gosh. But then I went home to my sister and I went, guess what? We're all ADHD. And she was like, don't give me the labels. I don't want to hear it. I thought, well, that's probably maybe where I was, like head in the sand, like I know something's not right, and like I have real difficulties with like relationships and understanding people and understanding what people mean when they say things. I always like seem to get like the wrong meaning from what they're meaning. So anyway, now I do a lot of double checking, but yeah, so that had always been in my kind of relationship past, and yeah, to have it kind of like opened for me in this training session was amazing. It was like a key turning in the lock, and all the mechanisms suddenly drop into the right place. You go, you're just talking about me here. This is me.
Yeah, I can really identify with that. But I think there's a lot to be said for those kinds of points of readiness, like
Yeah, that's
being
true.
ready to hear that. But also, I guess I'm really fascinated by how arts education has kind of moved on as well. So this idea that I think there was a kind of hangover. Art schools were great. I really actually wish they'd make a comeback personally, but there was this hangover of artists, you know, we're artists, we should just be able to do, we don't have to think about what we're doing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Actually are inherently that kind of a reflexive being. It's nice, I feel that I see a lot more that push to be kind of to have some kind of weighting between practice and research, and this kind of reflexive sort of feedback loop in the way that you operate, where sometimes you're writing and thinking and sometimes you're doing, and that is okay, you're still an artist.
Yeah.
I think that's something that has become more encouraged.
No, definitely.
And
Yeah.
it's lovely if that has encouraged you to step into that
Yeah.
more fully.
I mean, everything feels like a happy accident, you know. I had a friend who kind of went through the PhD process through University of Sunderland, and they've got like a funding system from the government for like if you work in FE and HE, and there's not very much research on FE, and so there's like this funding in place for the first couple of years of the PhD, which is amazing, and so that allowed me to, because you know, they didn't have like funding for PhD when I first started, and so yeah. Anyway,
It's impossible to do without funding.
absolutely impossible. And I think I'd started it. Well, I started it in 1999, my PhD, and I had to get a bank loan out for the first year, and I couldn't pay anymore. And so then it took me like 5 years to pay that back, so to leave. You know. Anyway,
but
so
if you're also having to focus on a job,
yeah,
you can't really give yourself the luxury, especially if your research is quite practice driven or practice based.
yeah,
Even if it's a straight research degree, it can still be practice based, because
yeah.
you
No,
still
absolutely,
have that element of a raft of practice to talk about potentially.
yeah.
Yeah, having to work your way through something like that doesn't leave a lot of space.
No, no. So when this came up, you know, this funded, and it was in teaching, which was like, I would have loved to just do a practice-based PhD on my practice, but I thought this is what's offered to me now, and I'm going to take it, because who knows if I'll ever get that chance again. So,
But I mean, okay, so this wasn't something that this is an occurring thought just now, but you talked about this idea of a community being really important to you. So where does the teaching fit within your practice? Because I guess if you're trying to build this state through making that reflects upon your belonging to a certain situation, then is the teaching part of that kind of responsibility to the community as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think my love of community allows me to see community in lots of different places. So within my teaching job at the Arts University, that I feel like I've got a community there. I've got like a community with my students, but I've also got a community with my colleagues, and you know, we do different things in those different communities, and sometimes a crossover. Yeah. So I still think community is really important to me, and I'm like one of those people that like joins everything. I'm like such a joiner, you know. If there's a book club, I'm in. If there's like I don't know, a knitting club, I'm in. If there's like anything, and so that's led me to start loads of clubs at university. So like I started an academic reading club with my students, and then I started a debate club. I started a poetry writing club. I'm a great one for starting stuff, but I am really looking for someone to take it on then afterwards.
So what happens with all of those beginnings? Are they things that then if someone can't take them on fall away, or
No.
Well?
I try and build in an end date so that I know that yeah, so that I know that I have got an end date for my own ADHD nerve. Like it's this parcel of time and it's all going to be fine.
That's really sensible.
Yeah, but then I have found that after students graduate, sometimes they want to continue with the club, and sometimes they invite me to come in and kind of work with them. So that's really lovely as well, thinking that people loved that club and they want to carry on doing it. Yeah.
So that's a good time to kind of ask about how you hit upon Magical Women. Maybe that's still quite early days for you, but it would be kind of nice to have a little chat about that.
Yeah.
Being as this is the Magical Women podcast.
Yeah.
Some shameless self-promotion.
I absolutely love Magical Women. It's been like such a joy to me, and I feel like that I'm beginning to be part of this little community as well. And I saw it first on the Curator Space, and during lockdown, Curator Space has been like an absolute boon to me. Because having like 30 years worth of creative practice behind me and not having any time to like go and drive to galleries and drop stuff off and then come back and get on with my teaching job, just don't have time for that. Being able to do stuff online for me has actually been amazingly transformative. So having that opportunity with Magical Women to be able to show some work online, it's like the perfect fit for me. But more than that, the Magical Women kind of ethos of neurodivergent women working together creatively, and I absolutely love Eleanor's idea, or whoever's idea it was, of sitting down and painting together, sitting
Yeah,
down and writing together. So good.
It's so lovely to be part of that generosity. And as someone else who likes to start things or build communities, it's kind of nice to have had that drop in your lap from somewhere else.
Yeah, I just love it so much, and it really ties in with my research about about how creatives think and through making. So that's a really good tie for me. But also, kind of my mum was really into at one point, and which often makes me wonder whether she might have been a bit ADHD as well, because she had like these massive obsessions, like all-consuming obsessions about lots of different stuff. Anyway, she had like a massive obsession with kind of alternative spiritualities. She was having a little bit of a finding herself, so she was like Catholic but not by birth, and then kind of like after 20 years of being Catholic and kind of in the 70s, it must have been a bit stodgy. she was kind of going for this, like finding herself, and she used to kind of drag me along to like all kinds of amazing, creative, diverse religious things, like kind of stretching from like theosophy and kind of witches' covens and dowsing groups, and just every kind of different way of expressing yourself spiritually or bodily, or kind of trying to get to the beyond in a different route. But we tried it out. Tried everything. So that was quite formative, really, and it's kind of informed my Catholicism. And so that I realized the kind of strand of Catholicism that I really enjoy is charismatic renewal, which is a very there's a lot of music, there's a lot of kind of creativity within charismatic renewal. There's a lot of freedom from what would be normal church. That was like my place. I was like, and this Catholic community that I'm in are part of that charismatic movement, and so there's a lot of very free ideas about religion and about kind of constrained to a certain amount within Catholicism and its boundaries, but much, very creative, very joyful.
But that is there, isn't it? It's right at the roots of that religion. If you think about someone like Julian of Norwich, or there's the magic is there, and to deny that sense of magic, to deny your faith a sense of magic, feels wrong.
Yeah.
And that it feels like that separation has only ever been imposed as a method of control.
Yeah.
And this is where those faiths really tumble or trip over themselves. It's not, faith and spirituality is actually a very inward looking thing, I think, as well as an outward expressive thing. It shouldn't be about that kind of.
No.
It's an expansive action to believe
that magicalness is, I feel, quite often situated within women. And women's experience of spirituality is magical, I feel, and our voice is sometimes not heard in the church. But like you were saying, there's Julian of Norwich. There's like amazing women role models, throughout the ages who, you know, like Hildegard of Bingen, you know, she's like a painter, she's a musician, she happens to be a nun. And yeah, it's finding agency where you are.
Yeah, and I think we forget this idea of that kind of the sanctuary we create from as well, because
Mm,
again, it's not being faithful shouldn't preclude other things.
yeah, exactly. It's a
And
spectrum,
especially as a
definitely.
woman, that kind of sanctuary that faith
Mm,
might offer to
yeah.
allow you to live a different life
Mm,
and work for a different purpose,
yeah.
to read, to learn, to make
Mm,
is
yeah.
that wasn't a luxury for centuries potentially that a lot of women would have.
Mm, no, I think that's true. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess that's where these amazing figures do come from. So have you mentioned your favorites there, or is there like an absolute favorite?
Um, mm, there are like so many amazing women. That I find the women kind of at the kind of, you know, crossroads between things, or, you know, the ones that kind of push it creatively in their faith or whatever, don't often be the ones that end up being the saints. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, like people like Dorothy Day. You know, she sets up a community. She kind of helps people, and she works with like young mothers and unmarried mothers, and she creates a community for those you know, members of like faith who feel pushed out. Uh, yeah, I think she's really amazing. I mean, Mother Teresa's just like really amazing woman. You know, she came from Albania, and she went to India, and she kind of gave up everything that she had, and just worked with the poorest of the poor, and like she just kind of put people to kind of thinking about what they were doing, and you know, kind of challenge them to respond differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that the level of kind of inspiration and kindness that she was able to invoke was really
Mm,
she did become a living icon in and of
yeah,
herself.
no,
Um,
absolutely.
there's
Yeah.
actually no argument there. um, yeah, and as a figure, I guess she exudes the idea so powerfully of
Mhm.
sanctuary, and
Yeah.
not having to be just a place; it can be a person.
Yeah. But I think like strong women are everywhere, and it's letting them have a voice, or, you know, kind of, since I've been doing my like research, you know, there's like loads of really interesting women through the ages who are trying to do something for other women, or trying to do something in their community, trying to just kind of put the foot down and say, what's going on here? Let's make a change.
But do you think that kind of concept of being pushed into being the outsider, as a woman, and potentially powerfully for us as magical women, with the added layer of that neurodivergence that gives you another step sort of back? Where am I going with this? It allows you to make those creative and imaginative leaps that seem obvious to you, with
Mm,
not panoptical, maybe panoptical, because I think we also try and empathize with a lot of different people in different situations.
mm.
Um, where am I going with this? Do you think that helps? I think is what I'm trying to ask.
Yes, yeah. I think not being in a position of power helps you understand most people's experience of life, um, and that empathy. If you ever get any semblance of power in or agency in your life, you remember that you didn't get here on your own. That all these amazing, inspirational people gave you the strength and the knowledge to be able to kind of put one foot in front of the other, and have some kind of feeling that that what you're doing might make a difference to somebody.
And especially if you're seeking to do that, is that something that you ever find exhausting. I mean, I guess
Mm.
that's something that as someone who practices so deeply, someone who believes so deeply, but also in academia as well, there's just being a woman still is an elephant in the room. It just
Mm.
there's still further fight that you have to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Hold your space there. Um,
I think just integrity is really important to me, and being who I am, and no matter what my job is within the institution, within academia, being me in that position helps me kind of think that I'm helping other people who are like me, so other women or other neurodivergents, just to kind of say, I'm not doing it perfectly, but somehow I got here, and I can talk to you about how you could try and get here too.
yeah, I think open that out a bit more, just so that we can have a little bit of a chat about this idea of kind of your practice as a processing medium a bit more as well.
Mm.
I think that invitation to identify with the things that are hard
Yeah,
is something that your practice does really well. So maybe, it would be quite nice at this point to talk a bit about your practice's relation to those hard things. So that birth, death, life
yeah, yeah.
relationship.
I think life is full of these really difficult things that you have to go through, and you can try and read books about it and self-help books, and um, but everybody goes through these things differently and in their own way. And I think having the facility to express myself creatively, whether it's in a drawing or a piece of ceramics or a piece of textiles, is like incredibly freeing for me. I can kind of like dump some of that terrible feeling out into the page, onto the object, and uh, yeah, these big questions in life. I think um, you know, being part of a community, a faith community, of like, you know, so many different people at different stages in their lives, and it's like having a massive, massive family. And so seeing other people going through these things helps me understand how I could go through these things, and try and process them somehow, because you know, there's like joyful things like being pregnant and having a child, and being with that child as they grow and develop and become a person, that is just like, it's beyond amazing. It's like the most creative thing that I ever did. you know um and it's such a like an amazing thing. And again, like everything, it's filled with joy and pain, and like it gives you suffering and laughter in equal measures. And I suppose my faith helps me cope with some of that, but my creativity helps me express it in an object.
Yeah,
Or
I think those difficult things and the joyful things can sit so close together. The
yeah,
line between them can be quite blurry sometimes.
yeah,
So to find a way of representing that so other people can pour those feelings in or
yeah,
draw from them as well.
yeah, yeah.
It's really,
And you have, like, being in my 50s now. um I've seen both my parents die. I've had my children and watched them grow. I've had all this like joy and sorrow all mixed up together, and death is definitely, like, death of a parent is like a massive thing. And and we all kind of process it differently. And uh, yeah, definitely, I found such a lot of solace in being able to materially manipulate something to try and express what I was going through.
Yeah, because it is immutable sometimes, I think,
Mm.
through just talking.
Yeah,
And
I mean, talking is good. Talking is really good. But sometimes you don't even have the words, especially at the beginning of an experience, when somebody's just died, or you just, and it takes a long time for me to process things enough for me to be able to say things out loud. But actually saying things is quite a long way down the road of the processing. The processing begins with like memories and thinking,
mm,
and then that thinking and memories turn into like sketchbook work or drawing, or starting to try and think about what that means, or what does this mean to me, this loss, this terrible feeling that I'm going through. How can I make it feel better? And
do you think that's a way of just trying to hold on to something or record something that you're aware is now a disappearing relationship? Or
no,
this
no,
idea of sort of, 'cause sometimes I think we can look to the past to project ourselves into the future,
yeah,
like at the points of difference.
yeah, yeah. I think it's not like a roll of film where you start on frame one and you get to frame 360. It's not like that for me. It's like the roll of film goes backwards and forwards, and sometimes it's double exposure. And uh, so those experiences are kind of overlaid with other stuff, other kind of sensory stuff, like kind of emotive smells, or um, kind of um, yeah, sounds that you, or music that you kind of associate with that person or that time. You know, um, Certain kinds of like fabric or clothing that kind of just takes you to being with that person, or yeah.
And I think it's something that doesn't really diminish, it doesn't go away. Like I on VE day this year, I got dressed up like everybody probably. And there was a moment where I was just boiling potatoes with some mint from the garden.
Mm,
And that smell so distinctly evoked being in the kitchen with my nana. And then
mm,
suddenly I was dressed like her as well.
yeah,
Oh my God. I just had this moment where I saw her in the mirror, but it was me. Um,
yeah,
and it was a happy moment, but it felt quite odd and transporting, and just this weird kind of
mm,
plugging back into something
yeah, yeah,
as well. And I've not made anything about it yet, but I feel like there probably will be something to be made
mm,
about
yeah,
that moment. And it's sort of interesting, this whole experience of having been so profoundly locked down with everybody.
mm,
This
yeah,
kind of the work that we will have to do as artists to help process for ourselves, but also for the people around us in our communities, the sheer weight of grief that's locked behind closed doors
yeah,
at the
yeah,
moment. Um,
yeah.
that's, yeah, I mean,
I mean, just people losing family during this time and not being able to grieve properly. So that kind of grief as well. I know so many people who've lost close family members during COVID, and being unable to celebrate their life in the way that they wanted to. With a big funeral or a wake or a celebration of their life. And that's, it's like we're putting everything on hold. People's birthdays, happy things, like people's weddings, which are just not happening, but they're just on a little placeholder saying, when this is all over, then we will have this beautiful party to celebrate our love for each other. The anniversaries and graduations and all these things that are happening that we would normally be in the world expressing creatively, um, we're like holding it in, almost like holding our breaths
Mm.
and waiting to exhale when everything's safe again. And
I think it's going to be really fascinating, especially for those of us who create almost ritualistically, or if there's a strong element of any kind of faith through the work that we do.
mm,
And that sense of responsibility to community as well. It'd be really fascinating to see what happens next. So I know you're doing this body of research,
mm.
but how do you envisage kind of placing yourself back into the world after all of this? What does that look like for Frances Norton?
Um, I don't know. I think it'll be a lot of dancing. I really miss dancing.
Oh gosh, me too.
Yeah.
Like with other people.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, dancing together with people, just being able to express our faith as a community in person. That
Mm.
will be just amazing. And being able to, I think, just be in nature. I know we can be in nature whenever we want to, but it's just not the same. I really miss the sea. Just really miss
Yeah,
the
me
sea.
too. I went swimming in a puddle, no joke. There is video evidence of this. I went swimming in a massive puddle a few weeks ago, and it was so liberating, but at the same time, it's just not the same.
No, no. Yeah, so I think kind of, I feel like my PhD is like a little bit of a mini lockdown for me because I haven't been able to create in the same way with
Mm.
the same materials and get my hands absolutely up to my elbow in clay since I've been doing this writing. But I accept that this is a new way of creating, it's a different creativity. And this creativity is all about words and how words go together. And so it was kind of a bit of a natural transition
Mm.
into poetry. And so, I quite often find myself writing poetry about the experience of lockdown, or um, I did kind of set myself a task like a year ago of writing a poem a day. And other years I've set myself a task of doing a drawing a day. So this year it was a poem a day, and when I got to the end of it I was like, do you know what, I think I can write poems now. I really do.
I mean, you can write poems from the very start of that experience, I would argue. But yeah, it is in the practice of doing these things that we kind of feel our own weight in them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or our own voice. And
Yeah.
yeah, uh, and it's a different agency in the world. It's kind of, you're telling a story or you're creating a moment of transformation within that poem, but you're doing it with words and images, but the images are written words rather than visual art.
Yeah, it's like word
Yeah.
sculpting. Or Eleanor often talks about word painting as well, because that's definitely what she does as an
Yeah.
artist.
Yeah. And yeah, I definitely love creating together, writing together. I think from my research, writing together carves out a space for people to kind of let themselves go, listen to each other, listen to each other's creativity as well. I think that's a really important part. But the actual physical sitting down with a pen and paper and writing together is it's like a covenant almost that we're making with each other. Today I will sit down and write with you, and whatever happens happens.
And it's nice that that still feels connective, even over a digital medium.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
was surprised.
like that's what we do as artists in whatever medium we're working in
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
You carve that space for relational
yes,
things to
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
Sorry, you were about to say it's nice that.
It's nice. I didn't realise that the screen would be a space for the imagination, because it can often feel like a very flat space and a very kind of distant space. But actually, um, if this is what we've got, then I will work with it because this is what we've got, and it's allowed us to be together with people, to talk, to have these conversations, to make these connections, to be creative together. So it's got to be a good thing.
I completely agree. And I just find it astonishing how humans will take and create in any circumstance.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I think that's probably nearly a good place to wrap it up because I'm aware we've been talking for an hour now. I just have a few minor curious things. So,
Yeah.
for people engaging with your work, or just for where your thinking is at the moment, what would be the biggest kind of other things that you recommend people do to kind of filter your work through? So maybe like what your favorite fairy tale is at the moment, what's really speaking to you, who's your favorite academic writer at the moment? What's the best thing you've just watched on Netflix? I don't know. What are those things that are really feeding into this kind of not hibernation, because we're all still making, but the richness of what's happening for you at the moment?
Yeah. I've really been enjoying on Netflix The Magicians, the series. It's like a mashup of, like, imagine Harry Potter goes to university, right? And everybody at university is magic. And then imagine that there is a doorway to a Narnia type land within that university.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it is really
Check it out.
amazing. Yeah, so Magicians, definitely my top tip for magical watching. I'm also really, I absolutely love the directors Pressburger and Powell, and they did The Red Shoes from 1948, which is
Wow.
a kind of musical ballet fairy story of dancing yourself to death. And also he did another film called, they did a film called Black Narcissus, which is, of course, it's about nuns.
Yeah, because the BBC just did was it the BBC just did a
Yes,
remake of
I
this?
didn't even realise they were doing that. Yeah. So, but the like 1948 film of it is, although it's like a little bit colonial when we're now more post-colonial and we have those kind of ideas and notions which understand that a little bit better. So there is a little bit of that overlaid on that particular film or that novel. But the like the cinematography is just like amazing. Absolutely love it. And you know, looking at the faces, like that kind of like close up on somebody's face as they're kind of moving through a range of emotions. Like, I remember watching that film as a child and thinking, oh yeah, this is how you do angry.
That's wonderful.
So yeah, those are my two, and I'm also like totally obsessed with Jane Austen and those kind of romantic novels. Yeah, so I have really been enjoying Bridgerton as well. The costumes are just like super bright and but like historically correct, but at the same time like so vibrant. Like
Yeah,
the colorization in Bridgerton is,
and the way they've adapted modern pop tunes as well, which is exactly what they would
I
have been
love
doing at
that.
the time.
Totally love that. I mean, as a musician, I absolutely love like adaptations and kind of variations on. Like I'm in an Irish group and an Irish band. We play at the most ridiculous places, you know, like working men's clubs in Doncaster, and and you know, like wedding anniversaries, first communions, you know, like all these crazy family events that are so beautiful and so rich. As like I always kind of see myself as a bit of an anthropologist, you know. I kind of go into these situations and just love people watching and see
Yeah,
relationships and family groups and how they interact with each other. It's so
but
interesting.
you're exciting quite intense transformations there as well, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And so we're in the band, so we're in this kind of like stepped up, you know, kind of overview of the party. just playing for hours now. Honestly, we just like play music for like 3 hours solid, and it's just so joyful and fun. I really miss that too.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. But it's again, there are particular kind of social contracts or rules that happen in those spaces, or even if the rules are unspoken, there'll be the traditional kind of bickering between the best man and someone, or
Yeah, totally. Or people falling in love at these things. That's really beautiful as well. And then, like, you kind of you see their engagement party afterwards. Like, oh, this is so beautiful.
there's something very Jane Austen about that, though. I
Yeah,
think that definitely they fit together. Like,
I think you're right. Actually,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Right, I'm going to let you go, unless there was anything else you particularly wanted to break open or talk about.
Oh, I just really hope this is useful for anybody, and that I'm not just warbling on.
No, absolutely not. I mean, there's so much, there's such a breadth of ideas embedded in your practice, and so many kind of relations to particular fairy tales, or
Mm,
practices or rituals. Like, we could probably talk for an entire weekend, and
yes,
nobody would get bored.
I think so.
But I
And
think
it's been lovely to hear your take on things as well. It's like, yeah, this is good conversation.
well, thank you so much for talking to me. I'm
Yeah,
just aware that I don't want to give Eleanor too much to have to edit.
yeah,
So thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited to see what comes next for you. Can't wait to read the PhD. I'm sure
yeah. Well, thank you for this platform, for being able to show my work, and show my writing, and talk, and just for this place, this really special and magical women place, for being creative in the midst of all this crazy lockdownness.
yeah, it's a beautiful thing to be a part of, and
Mm.
it's nice to have those yeah, diamonds on the floor.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
This moment. Okay, right. I'm just going to get rid of these questions I've got on the screen in front of me. Uh, and oh, yeah, was there anything, sorry, finally, is there anything that you would like to plug? Any Instagram accounts that people can check your work out on? Upcoming
Yeah.
project that's imminent?
Um, I've got a web page. Well, it's like a blog page. It's called Frances Ann Artist. I've also kind of connected to that, I've got a poetry page. So if people are interested in having a look at poetry, I think that one's called Frances O'Donnell Poetry. And I've also got a blog called Talking About Art. So if you're interested in art and kind of ideas around kind of like methodologies or thinking about art in an academic way, I've got that blog. I've also got Instagram, which is just under Frances Ann. I've got a Facebook page. I like to spread myself out over quite a lot of different things. I think I probably have like got a Tumblr and a Flickr account as well, but I probably haven't done anything to those in a long time.
My Tumblr appeared.
Oh no!
It wasn't very good. It's probably one of the pots I should have smashed.
Yeah, yeah. Love that. Yeah, and I don't have any projects coming up at the minute. I've got to concentrate on my writing. Yeah, try not to take too much stuff on.
What's the title at the moment for the PhD?
Oh, it's called Developing Thinking and Writing in Art Education. And then it's got a bit of a longer title called To What Extent Do Pedagogic Interventions Designed to Improve Critical Thinking Based on Guiding Principles of Communicative Inquiry Increase the Motivation of Art Students to Write?
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. It is good, and I have so enjoyed setting up my little poetry groups and critical thinking clubs. They've been like really beautiful, a really beautiful part of this process. And just
Yeah, it would be nice to get that kind of rubber stamped piece of original knowledge out into the world, because as an artist, that is something that you're doing most of the time. But yeah, having that seal of academic approval
Yes.
can feel very weighty sometimes, I think.
Yeah. There's quite a lot riding on it as well, I guess. Like
I mean, fundamentally, it's all about just underpinning and expressing the knowledge that you already have. Yeah, I wasn't trying to load pressure onto you there. I have absolutely no doubt that Dr. Francis is already in the house. We just need to get that kind of certificated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I really get what you're saying about, like the way that it just kind of pulls you to pieces while you're doing that thinking, and you feel a little bit unstrung at points.
The academic hamster wheel is real.
My son's just told me he's got his piano class now.
Okay, I will let you go. Sorry, thank you so much for talking.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it.
Your Saturday. Sorry for holding up the piano lesson.
No, it's fine.
Bye, Francis. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. See you later.